This video has been sponsored by Brilliant. The modern world requires a very solid grasp of mathematics, science, and computer science. Learning these three subjects can improve your life in many ways, professional or otherwise. However, for most people, it is quite tough to get into these subjects because they're quite complicated and also very, very technical. That is where Brilliant comes in. Brilliant is an online learning platform, and it is by far the best way to learn math, science, and computer science interactively. This is because you're not constantly assaulted by words, paragraphs, and diagrams, but instead you have to learn interactively using hands-on demos. It is much easier to understand a line of code, for example, when you're writing it in real time and seeing exactly what it does. To get started for free, visit the link in the description and the pinned comments. The first 200 of you will get 20% off of Brilliant's annual premium subscription. Thank you very much, Brilliant, for sponsoring this video. Hello everybody, it's me, Roku, back with some more League of Legends content. In this video, we're going to go through 20 tips and tricks that will lead to you becoming a better player instantly. First off, you should cast your abilities and your items with Quick Cast by default. Before we can get into why this is better, let's talk about the three different types of casting that the game has: Normal Cast, Quick Cast, and Quick Cast with Indicator. Normal Cast is the slowest of all three. To activate Normal Cast, you have to basically press this button under the key so that it's dark like this. With Normal Cast, you click on the ability once, and then to cast the ability itself, you have to click with your mouse. So when you activate the ability with your keyboard or just clicking on the HUD, which you shouldn't do, just use your keyboard, you get the indicator, and then you click with your mouse, and you cast the ability. This is by far the slowest way to cast abilities, like completely. The next, the middle, kind of slow, but also kind of precise, is Quick Cast with Indicator, which you activate by enabling this button so that it's all bright, and then clicking on this check mark. Replace Quick Cast with Indicator. What this is that when you press the key down, you see the indicator, which is like, the diagram of what the ability is going to impact, and then the ability gets cast when you let go of the key. Now, on your keyboard, pressing like a key in and then letting go are two different inputs. So although it is faster than Normal Cast with Indicator, right? I mean, just Normal Cast in general, Quick Cast with Indicator can be slower than just simple Quick Cast. Quick Cast without the indicator, or just simple Quick Cast, makes it so that the ability gets cast the second you press the key on your keyboard. So your keyboard isn't like, the game doesn't have to wait for you to let go of the key to cast the ability, okay? So the fastest is Quick Cast, which means that for most of the time, you should be using Quick Cast to cast everything, right? Items, abilities, etc. Tip number 2. You can run into situations sometimes where you will actually need to aim your abilities with the indicator. This can be useful when you're placing a ward, for example, because if you have the indicator for the ward, you can get a lot of helpful tips, as in when you're going to put it in a bush, the wall, that you just won't get if you just use Quick Cast with it. In order to remedy this issue, you gotta go into the settings, go into abilities and summoner spells, and in here, you have the three different types of casting, okay? So I want there to be Quick Cast by default, which I've set here, and I want it so that when I hold shift and press a key, it uses the Quick Cast with Indicator, okay? So we go into our items here. Let's just find our items, right? Trinket, right? That's the ward one. And Trinket with Quick Cast, we click this, shift 4, right? Because that's the key I have for my normal ward. So when I press 4, it puts the normal ward down. But when I press shift and 4, I get Quick Cast with Indicator. So when I let go, it puts the ward down, right? You can do this with your items as I just displayed. You can do this with your abilities. I've already set my abilities to this. This is not my giveaway default, but you should set this so like if you have an ability like a Naily Q or something, like the spear that needs time and just precision, you can just play with your normal abilities, and then when you need that precision, just go for the Quick Cast and cast that ability. Tip number 3, target champions only. Have you ever run into a situation where instead of attacking an enemy, you accidentally attack a minion or a turret? This is where target champions only comes into play. Target champions only is a toggle or a hold, where if you have it activated, your cursor turns red like this, or it changes if you have the old cursor. What this basically does is that if you try to target minions or turrets or jungle camps with this cursor, it won't hit them. It will only target champions, as the name suggests. This is very, very useful if you want to get attacks on targets that are champions and you don't want to basically hit the minions, especially in like a big minion wave, or against a champion that has a lot of minions, like Elise with her spiders, York with his ghouls, etc. In order to activate this, or just bind it in the first place, it's going to be in the abilities and summoner spell section. You just scroll down to the very bottom of it, and then here's target champions only. I've set mine to C because it's under my thumb, but you can set it to any key that you want. Right now, I have my target champions only key set as a toggle. So I click it once, and it toggles it on. To configure this, you got to go into this tab game, and you got to enable this option, because by default it's off. And what's going to happen is that to have target champions only activate, you have to hold the key down, which can occupy a finger, which, sometimes makes the game hard to play, but it also gives you more control in terms of when exactly you need it, so you can actually toggle it or off, on or off, depending on whether you need it or not. Okay? So just your preference, if you like the toggle, enable this checklist. If you don't, just have it to the point where it's off so that you have to actually hold it to use it. But definitely bind this ability because it's very, very useful and crucial, especially in big dive plays. Level up abilities using control. Did you know that you can level up your abilities without actually having to click on these little arrows? To do so, you press control and you click on the ability that you want upgraded on your keyboard. So I want Q upgraded, so what I do is I hold control and I press Q, W, E. This is very helpful because in the middle of the fight, you don't want to get into a position where your cursor is too busy leveling up your abilities to the point where you can't actually input any orders on your champion. Let's say you're in a big fight, you get your level 6. Instead of clicking the level 6 and letting the enemy kill you, you just do it on your, keyboard automatically, just very quickly, and you can actually use that ability as soon as it comes back up in order to win the fight quickly or to stop the enemy from flashing away from you or something like that as well. In order to bind this, because this is a bind that you can actually change, you got to go into abilities and summoner spells right here, go to the very bottom, and then there are these 4 options. Level up spell 1, 2, 3, 4. You can change this to shift or alt or whatever you need, but the default control option is good enough for most people. Buffering point and click abilities. Have you ever been in a situation where you want to flash in and target a champion with a point and click ability, but then they flash away? In order to remedy this problem, you have to use the ability first and then flash in. So if you do it the normal way, which is flash and then use the ability, you see that there are some microseconds of time in between when you flash and when you use the ability that gives the enemy time to basically react and flash away. To circumvent this, you press the ability on the enemy first, and then you flash in. So the champion automatically attacks the target just instantly as soon as they get in range. You can also do this with auto attacks. You can do this with basically any special auto attack, just anything that's point and click and targeted basically. This is very useful because most point and click abilities actually follow the enemy character after they've flashed. So doing this properly can really get you kills that just, the enemy could have flashed away from before. And it's also super useful against champions that have dashes to begin with, like your Kassadins, your Ezreals, etc, etc, etc. Next tip. Warding outside your own ward's range. Did you know that you can actually put wards outside of this ward's range on the other side of walls? Like so. In order to do this, and just have a better imagination for the walls that you can do this through, think of it like this. So when you approach a massive wall like this, imagine a line from where you are to the point where you want to place the ward. And in this line, try to imagine a cut along the half of it. If you put this ward on the right side of this cut, it will spawn on this side of the screen. If we put this ward on the left side of this cut, it will spawn on this side of the wall. You can basically think of it like this. League does not allow champions, units, and etc. to remain inside of walls. Walls are a no-go, which basically means that anything that's caught in the middle of a wall has to pick a direction to go in, right? So if a ward is caught on one side of a wall, it will find the nearest bit of occupiable land to go on, and it'll basically just get pushed right there. This is also the case with flashes. If your flash lands you on one side of that cut that we talked about, it's going to just basically extend the range of your flash over to the entire other side of the wall. There are many, many walls that this kind of flash can be done over. The trick is basically just learning them and essentially practicing them in practice tool and then applying them in-game when it's time to flash. This trick doesn't apply to just flashes, but also abilities that move your character in general. For example, if I Malphite ult to the other side of this wall like this, it's going to go all the way across. In fact, this is a common trick by Malphite mains in order to ult faster, because Malphite ult has a travel time, so if you ult like this, it's way faster than just clicking on the destination. When you're doing a Baron, try to make sure that the character with the most amount of health, who does the least amount of damage to the Baron, is the one tanking the Baron's aggro. This is because the character that the Baron auto-attacks receives the special effect called Baron's Gaze. Baron's Gaze reduces the amount of damage that target deals to the Baron by 50%, so make sure that your main DPS is not the one with this effect. So if we place a dummy down right here, an ally dummy down, closer to the Baron than we are, then he will switch his aggro and we no longer get this effect. So it will deal a lot more damage than before. Our next tip is how to fully utilize the practice tool. Most people know that the practice tool exists, but they don't really know the maximum amount of things you can do with it to really be efficient with how you train the game. For example, did you know that you can reset the game in practice tool without having to restart the entire match? You can do this by pressing the reset game key that is on the third page. So this is page 1, page 2, page 3. Press reset game, and the game will treat itself like it just started all over again. The timer won't reset on its own, but the entire game will. So this is very useful if you want to do CSing exercises like CS for the first 5 minutes, and after you're done, or if you just want to stop and start over, you can basically just press that key and just start all over without having to restart the entire game and go back to the client. This can also help if you're a jungler, so that you can practice your clears without having to restart the entire game again. Another thing you can do is limit your levels. So if you press lock XP level, this makes it so that you no longer gain any XP. So let's kill this jungle camp right here. We get no experience. This can be very useful because if you want to see how much damage you do to minions or champions at a certain level, you can use this lock XP tool in order to basically keep yourself at that state for however long you like to really get used to that extra amount of damage. If you want to practice combos in a clear area, you could go to base and then toggle the turret fire in order to make sure that the turrets don't mess up with your combos if you accidentally hook the enemy champion into the turret range or something like that. If the minions are annoying, you can also disable them and just make the turrets invisible while you're at it so that they don't really impact the gameplay of what you're trying to practice in any way. In order to practice freezing the minion wave, you can use your dummies to hold waves back. So what I'm going to do is spawn an ally dummy, put it right here to hold a massive enemy minion wave behind the enemy turret, and basically just wait 30 seconds or so, or like a minute, in order for the wave to build up. Right? Now that this wave has built up, I'm going to clear the dummy, and what's going to happen is that we're going to get a massive enemy minion wave crashing into our turret that we have to thin and freeze. You can always adjust the amount of minions they want pushing into you. Like while it's getting stuck at your ally dummy, you can always cut it in half or do other things. But now that we have this massive minion wave, we can try to freeze it. Do you want to know how much damage your abilities would do to a target of different amounts of tankiness? You can always adjust the amount of stats a dummy has using these buttons right here on the same page as the spawning dummies page. You can basically use these buttons, or the shortcuts that they have, to add health and armor and magic resist to these targets. So for example, I want this target to resemble like a squishy support. So I'm going to add HP to it. 1500 seems fine. I'm going to add some resistances to it. So that seems a bit too much, so let's remove a bit. Control-Shift-H, bam. Always use the hotkeys because they're a lot faster than just, wailing away with the mouse. So this is like a normal squishy support on the later portions of the game. And we can kill them pretty quickly, right? Now that we have the dummy way tankier, it's going to take a lot longer for us to kill them. You can basically use this in order to see how much damage the same ability or combo will do to different targets. The health bar can just be a simple way of measuring your health and your mana, but if you learn to read it, you can get a lot of information about champions just by looking above them. For example, if you buy Guardian Angel, for example, Guardian Angel, you will get these angel wings above the level icon, and this basically means that if you die, you will revive. This is the same case with abilities like Zac passive, and EV passive, and etc. that will also revive you after you die. A spell shield makes your health purple and change in this way, and when you're invulnerable, you'll get this golden barrier along with this shield icon around your level. Visit the League of Legends fandom wiki and open up the health bar article in order to tell every single effect that can be represented by health bars. You can also get this helpful little infographic that shows you what every single different health bar represents in terms of game mechanics. If you just started with the game, always make sure that the auto attack setting is disabled. The auto attack setting basically makes it so that the second your champion is next to a target that it can auto attack, it will start to auto attack it. This is a horrible setting because it basically makes precision and wave control entirely inaccessible to you, as your champion will just push no matter what you do. One of the worst things you can do in League is to actually just set one preset keystone and use it for every single match. The thing is, in the champ select, you can actually change your runes depending on what you're facing. So before every single match, wait for every single enemy champion to be locked in, and when they are, set your runes according to what you're going to need in-game to face them, and or beat them. You should be treating builds the same. Don't have one cookie cutter build that you follow every single game, because you will inevitably run into a match where that build is completely useless. For instance, this is an example build for Malphite. It is full armor, so if we run into a team where they have an AP source of damage, most of these items are going to be completely useless. So, the best thing you can do is set yourself an item set with all the items that you can possibly buy, and what you should do is read about the items and learn exactly what each and every single one of them does. This way, you'll be able to perfect an item build during the game on your own. Even the most general and versatile build is going to be wrong or straight up terrible sometimes, so it's best to get used to using your brain and picking items during the match. Always abuse your level power spikes in order to surprise your enemy and kill them before they know what's going on. In this example right here, the Renekton hits level 2, but instead of killing the minion himself, he walks towards me to get in range, and then flash W Q ignite kills me. This means that when I wasn't expecting the level 2 because I wasn't paying attention, he could get a kill on me before I knew how to react. This is a very nice source of kills in lower ranks, and it's something you should definitely abuse as much as possible. Now when you're using the default settings, and someone uses a CC ability on you, it's quite hard to tell when you get control of your character back again. Normally, you get this indicator right on your HUD here, and it's quite tiny and difficult to tell when it's going to be finished. However, what you can do right here is go into the interface settings, scroll down under these sliders, and click on Show Loss of Control UI. Now that we have the setting enabled, instead of looking at our HUD for a tiny icon, we get a bar above our health bar that tells us when exactly the CC will finish. This works for all CC effects, blinds, stuns, roots, suppressions, etc. On the surface level, it might seem difficult to dodge skill shots because if you're new to the game, you won't really know what to look out for. But if you memorize the exact animation of the enemy champion, then it's quite easy to dodge it and predict the skill shot direction. The first step is to essentially memorize the exact animation of the ability you are looking to learn to dodge. Once you've learned exactly how the champion looks, and how they face depending on where they want to throw the skill shot, you can tell when the skill shot's coming out, and also where they're aiming it to begin with. Once you've memorized the exact animation of the enemy champion, and are warmed up with moving around, it becomes easier to dodge skill shots if you're predicting that they'll use them. When you're jungling, you want to basically make sure that you're kiting the jungle camp towards the next camp that you're planning on doing. Obviously, you don't want to leave the leash range of the jungle camp, but you want to basically make it so that you're running as less as possible between camps. So yeah, instead of walking all the way from here, I was instantly able to restart this camp. Always use your F keys in order to switch between allied champions and see how they are doing. You can use this to tell whether they're pushed in, whether they're pushing, and whether the enemy champions are in a gankable state or not, helping you better plan your movement around the map. If you dislike using F keys for this, you can go into settings, hotkeys, scroll down and click on camera control to see the 4 buttons right here. You can bind them to however you want to use them. By default, center self is going to be F1, and then it's going to be F1, 2, 3, 4, 5. But because on my keyboard, the first 4 F keys are together with a gap until the next 4 F keys, I decided to unbind the one for center self, and just binded my teammates to the first 4. I already have a center camera for myself, so I didn't really need to use my F keys for this purpose. The Rift Herald is a jungle camp that is oftentimes neglected by a lot of junglers, and also top laners who have prio on their own. Killing Herald gives you a lot of gold and XP, and it gives you the Herald itself, which lets you bust down turrets earlier on, and get a lot of gold using the plates. In order to kill the Herald without losing too much of your health, you have to memorize its moveset and dodge accordingly. First off, when you attack the Rift Herald, it will charge straight and move everything in its way to the right or the left depending on what side you are. So I hit him, and it's going to charge towards me. So I want to dodge that in order not to take any damage from it, and the second he does that, his eye is exposed. Basically speaking, when he has an eye open behind him, you want to get behind him and auto-attack it. Now that attack is basically a charge up that you can actually dodge. So every time you kill the eye, or randomly in some cases, the Herald will do a charged attack, and you have to essentially get out of its way to not take damage. So if you stay in range like this, it's going to deal a ton of damage, so in order to dodge it, you have to essentially just walk back. As a laner, whether that be a top lane, mid lane, or a bot laner, you'll find yourself in a lot of matchups where stepping up to try to CS is going to lead to you being poked down and losing your HP. Now I hope I didn't have to tell you this, but your health is a resource. Not just the maximum amount of health you can have, but the amount of health you can have out of that maximum amount. Potions cost gold after all, so if you're going to go for a CS, but the enemy champion is protecting you violently, you have to basically gauge whether that minion is worth the amount of HP you lose. If you're going to lose 200 health for just one ranged minion, then it's probably not worth it. But in some cases, when it's like a cannon, then it is. Try to gauge the situation on your own and understand that it's okay to lose CS in order to keep your HP. In a lot of these bad matchups, we're essentially just waiting for a moment when we can just turn on the enemy and kill them using a power spike or using the help of our jungler. You don't want to get to this point and be so low HP that you just get one shot by a single combo. That is basically it for this video. Goodbye.